So the first question is, which aspects of Japanese do you think are the most challenging to teach online? And Revae Sensei, let's go ahead and start with you.
Thank you. One of the things I find most difficult is the interpersonal communication because they don't get a lot of opportunities unless they are watching maybe some anime that they understand. They're not getting a lot of opportunities to hear good examples of what that sounds like and what that looks like. So that's one of the most difficult that I have found to teach. And Sarah, do you also want us to talk now about how we're trying to change our course design or just talk about what we find difficult right now?
Oh, any or all. I think
Okay.
anything related to course design, since you and I have really been in the trenches of that for many years, our
Yes.
participants would love to hear about that.
Okay, so in order to try to combat that recently, what I've been working on in our new course development is trying to put in more of those modeled conversations for students to hear, but then also for them to participate in. And maybe that looks like they have to just continue the thread of the conversation that gets started for them. So maybe we have the first half and then they have to just continue the conversation. Or maybe they just have to answer the questions, just some sort of scaffolding in there so that we don't just say, hey, make a conversation, because some of them are not going to really know where to start. And when they do try it, it doesn't turn out right. So I think we have to provide a lot of models and some scaffolding. Now I'm thinking right now of asynchronous timing, but if it's synchronously, then I also think it might be a good idea if we have modeled conversations that students have to maybe read through and go through on their own with a partner. Because I don't know about you, but when I've put students in breakout rooms before and say, practice this conversation without scaffolding and modeling, it's crickets. Or they're talking in English saying, do you know what we're supposed to do? I don't know what we're supposed to do. So I think having some models and maybe some structured conversation or sentence and question starters is going to be really helpful to help combat that.
I think everyone can relate to the dread of the crickets or resorting back to conversations in English. So I agree that that modeling is a great way to engage the students, but it also helps them to break the ice a little bit and maybe get a little bit more comfortable in putting themselves out there and getting some ideas to what kinds of things they could potentially say. Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Revae. And now let's go to Maeda Sensei. Which aspects of Japanese do you think are the most challenging to teach online?
Okay, so first of all, it's all depending on what online learning environment you are in, right? Could be 100% asynchronous or 100% synchronous, or like me, blended, which is a combination of asynchronous and synchronous, right? So I'm talking from my own experience, which is a blended instruction. And I'd like to address two things. And first one, it is really obvious that the teaching distinctive cultural aspect, such as gestures and hands-on cultural activities online. For example, how to exchange business card, 名刺, politely, or handing something over to others with two hands, right? In the class, submitting assignment or handing out the um, handouts, right? And making sure that correct orientation is facing towards the receiver, right? So these small gestures carry out lots of meanings in Japanese culture. And of course, students can learn YouTube video, or I can explain just like what I explained right now. But learning happens when you're doing it, right? People learn by doing it, and they are kind of tough to practice online. We can still do it, but it's not so natural. Then, and the second challenge is teaching the Japanese writing system, especially feedback and assessment. Like um, for collecting the writing character assignment, usually students have to take a picture of that assignment and then upload, and then teacher will give the feedback. And I usually use the learning system, Canvas learning management system. So Canvas app with iPad with stylus pen. So I can, really correct the students writing, but if you do not have those device, then that's going to be pretty difficult. And also that leads into the second point, finding the right balance between handwriting and typing. So online, it's so easy to submit everything online, typing, right? But we live in a digital age, then typing is definitely important. And people are writing by hand less and less. So, but I believe that handwriting still holds significant cultural and cognitive value in the Japanese society and Japanese language education. So in my class, I try to include it in class, not just for learning characters per se, but as a cultural practice too. So let me quickly talk about the cognitive and the pedagogical benefits of the handwriting, right? As you know, the research has shown that handwriting supports deeper learning, leading into long-term acquisition and deeper understanding, especially with complex script like kanji. So typing is way easier and makes sense when the students are submitting the writing assignment or character writing online, but relying solely on the typing is often result in the student who can only read but not write. So they can recognize but cannot write, right? So the Dr. Masako Douglas at California State University, Long Beach, gave a really, really brilliant presentation on this, how to teach kanji today. So I highly recommend, recommend you to watch her video. And actually, she is among the audience today, so we can ask her about that. And so that said, I include both handwriting and typing assessment or assignment for specific purpose. So then, so handwriting at the beginning, students will learn how to, the new character, hiragana, but then as soon as they learn that, I will introduce the typing so that they can type the comment on the Canvas discussion or Padlet or write an email to me in Japanese, right? At the very early stage, or type in the Zoom chat window. So that's how I combine both of them. And then also, I think this is really important to give choice to your students. Whenever it's possible and appropriate, I give choice my students. You can do this assignment either handwritten or typing. Right, thank you, that's all.
That's a trend that I'm noticing more and more, is that more educators are trying to find ways to give their students that choice and the voice so they can decide for themselves what do they want their learning experience to look like. But I completely echo your sentiments about the importance of learning handwriting. And I remember my own personal experience when I was first learning basic hiragana. I realized that I'm actually a very kinesthetic learner, and the process of writing and learning the stroke order, but it's also just soothing to the spirit, I think. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Maeda Sensei. And then Love Sensei, let's move to you. And again, the same question. Which aspects of Japanese do you think are the most challenging to teach online?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll first just echo something that Bostwick Sensei said. I find that the speaking and listening aspects are a bit more tricky than the reading and writing aspects. You know, just the nature of the writing system, like we have writing systems because there is a need for asynchronous communication, right? You know, people that are not face to face needing to communicate with each other. So I think there's a lot there that, you know, lends itself really well to online learning and asynchronous communication. But, you know, speaking and listening, I think is a little more difficult. There's a couple aspects in particular. I think like Aizuchi is kind of difficult to do online, right? Just because there's a little bit of a lag, and so it's hard to get the students to do it at the right timing. I think that's a lot easier just in person. I think like Deixis, can be difficult to do online. In the classroom, I'll put an object in front of me, an object in front of the student, an object somewhere else, and I'll ask about, which object is which, right? But you just don't have that same control over the space in an online environment. So I think that's tricky. I'll mention a couple more things that I find tricky that I think we've actually been able to do something about a little bit. I think for, things like Aizuchi, we just haven't gotten a good answer for how to do that, even synchronous online. But one is building a sense of community with the students. We found that that's, a lot more difficult in an online environment than in person. They'll talk with each other after class when it's an in-person environment. But it's just harder to get them to know each other and get them like interacting with each other and get them to really have that sense of community. Um, and I'll just mention briefly like our program at the University of Pittsburgh. So currently we're really focused on in-person instruction, but our summer program is all online virtual instruction now. And the way we structure that program is that it's broken up into synchronous sessions where everybody's coming together. But the synchronous sessions are basically like 100% in Japanese. And then there's asynchronous lectures the students watch. And then there's also office hours where students can come in and ask questions and get answers if they need to. So kind of mostly synchronous just in terms of how we're balancing that. But we've also got a bit of asynchronous in there. So one thing we've been trying to do to build community is just having some activities that are not, we're not learning language. We're maybe not even using it that much. We're just like getting together and doing something. And we've done, some things virtually that way. This year, strangely, everybody that was participating in our online program was actually locally in Pittsburgh. Some of them are, far enough away that it would probably be difficult to come to the university every day. But they were all local enough that our instructor, Shun Maruyama, who's had some great ideas and some great things for our program, but he actually scheduled an in-person meetup and got all the students to come together. I don't think you can do that in just any, online program. But just making some efforts there to try and improve that sense of community with students. I'll also mention two other things. One is that like when it's in person, we've got native speakers from Japan that are at our university studying internationally, and it's a lot easier to get students connected with them and have experiences using the language with native speakers outside of the classroom. That's a lot more difficult in an online environment. But we've been using Talk Abroad to assign students activities where they're using the language with a native speaker outside of the classroom in our virtual classes. And I can talk a little bit more about that later if you like. The last thing I'll mention is in an online environment, I think it's easier for students to cheat, and I think it's harder to catch them at it. And I don't have a really great answer for that one either, but I think that's another thing that's a bit difficult.
That is definitely another challenge. And I think AI plays into it quite a lot. And it's a very big topic that, that definitely is really challenging. So, academic integrity. But you also said a lot of things that I think a lot of us resonate with the importance of the connection. So, not just the student to student connection, but making connections with native speakers. I mean, I can certainly vouch that was how I really leveled up was through my friendships with native speakers. So great stuff in there. Thank you very much for that, Love Sensei.